How can we classify inventory models? The two key questions we have are how much should you order and how often should you order? To answer these, we can use inventory models. We can classify them depending on whether demand is variable or stable and whether we are selling short shelf life products or long shelf life products. So what do we mean by variable or stable demand? A variable demand is a demand that fluctuates over time. For example, let's say this shows the daily demand of a certain product. On day 1, 5 units are sold. On day 2, 8 units are sold, and so on. You can see that the daily demand is fluctuating over time. So this is called a variable demand, and you can find the daily average and variability from a data set. The daily average is measured by the mean, and the daily variability is measured by the standard deviation. We can compute these numbers easily from our data set. On the other hand, a stable demand is a demand that's constant over time. For example, let's say this shows the daily demand of a certain product. On day 1, 5 units are sold. On day 2, 5 units are sold, and so on. This is a stable demand. You can find out the daily average and variability from your data set. Of course, the daily variability is 0 because these numbers are not changing over time. Again, we can compute the daily average from a data set easily. Next, what do you mean by short or long shelf life products? Short shelf life products have limited shelf life. For example, newspaper is good for 1 day, and vegetables are good for a few days. They have short shelf life. On the other hand, long shelf life products can last for a long time. For example, wooden tables are good for a long time. Plastic cups are good for a long time. So let's think about inventory models. First, let's say demand is stable and we are planning for a short-term period. For example, we are planning to sell swimsuits for the upcoming summer. We know exactly how many units will be sold, so demand is stable. It's known. The selling period is just 1 summer, so this is a short-term planning. Then how many swimsuits should we produce? Since we already know how many swimsuits will be ordered, we just produce that amount. So your question can be answered trivially. Next, let's say demand is variable and we are planning for a short-term period. So for example, we want to produce monthly magazine for the upcoming month, and the monthly magazine will be sold in the upcoming month only. So this is a short-term planning and demand is variable. In that case, we can use a model called news vendor model. Next, let's say demand is variable and we are planning for a short-term period, for a long-term period. For example, you want to sell wooden tables. They have long shelf life, so it's a long-term planning and demand is variable. So in that case, we can use a model called the quantity reorder model, the QR model. Next, let's say demand is stable and you are planning for a long-term period. For example, you want to sell coffee. Coffee has relatively long shelf life, long-term planning, and demand for coffee is very stable. So in this case, we can use a model called the economic order quantity model, the EOQ model. In this course, we're going to focus on this model. And in the next part, we're going to discuss the details of this model.